Welcome everyone. We are live and alive from Apex 1 in Westfield, New Jersey. This is week 3 of the Super GT League. We are racing at Autopolis, the short layout. We're here in Japan. This is now the second leg of the league. Week 3 of 5 to be exact. But all drivers being in the Japanese Super GT cars, they are now at the home of these cars here in Japan. Autopolis, as you see from the layout, in the top right side of the screen, it's a pretty flowy track. You have a good mix of straightaways with mostly medium and high-speed turns. The lap times will be fairly quick at this track. As we see, Max is currently already at a 1 minute 0.8, 108.4 to be exact. 108.7. David has just actually moved up into first with a 108.4. So for those that are new, just want to introduce you guys to the basics of the league as well as the format. So this is a 5-week league that we do. Every week we do 2 races, and before that we start with a 15-minute qualifying session, which is what we're currently in right now. We have 11 and a half minutes left of the qualifying, but after this session concludes, all the drivers will have about a 3 to 4 minute break to get their cars ready for the first race of the week. The first race will be a 25-minute race. The starting grid will be determined by where you finish in the qualifying session. After the first 25-minute race, the drivers will have another 3 to 4 minute break, and then they will jump on the grid for race 2. And for race 2, it'll be the same format, 25 minutes. It also gives the same amount of points as race 1. The only difference is that race 2 will have a starting grid that is the reverse order from the results of race 1. So right now we're looking on board with Keith. We just saw Paul off track there next to Keith. But this is our brand new drone camera that we have for our broadcasts. And here you see Keith currently manning the Lamborghini Murcielago for the Super GT League. But all the cars in this league are BOP'd. They're all GT3 class, which is about around 350 horsepower. These cars also have a ton of downforce, definitely more than GT4 cars. I believe they have more downforce than the GT3 cars as well. But at the moment, Keith is sitting in 4th place in qualifying. He has a 109.8. He would need to improve on his lap time by half of a second in order to overtake P3, which is Seamus. Seamus, as you can see here, is driving the Subaru Legacy. He is one of the few drivers in the only all-wheel drive car in this league. Just as I say that, since Seamus going off into the dirt, that almost certainly kills lap time. But yeah, all these cars in the league are rear-wheel drive, except for the Subaru Legacy that Seamus is driving. We also have Brian driving the Legacy for the league, as well as Cole. Although Cole is not racing today, Cole as well as Eric Waters, those 2 guys will be the only 2 drivers that are racing this week. But at the moment, Brian has actually just improved on his lap time. Brian has just put up a 109.6, which has jumped him ahead of Keith in qualifying. Brian's now in 4th, sitting 0.2 out of Keith, and then half a second behind Seamus. Elion is one of the stronger guys in the league. Let me just take a look at the standings to see where he's at. But Elion is no stranger to podiums. He usually sees himself within the top 3 at minimum. But we're used to seeing many wins from Elion at this point. although he has struggled in some of the races so far in the Super GT League. At the moment, Elion is sitting in 4th place in the overall standings. He has 43 points, and the leader of the league at the moment is Brian with 72 points. He has a 25-point gap right now to 2nd place, which is Cole. So Elion is driving the Toyota MRS for this league. Same way Brian, Seamus, and Cole are the only ones in an all-wheel drive car. Elion is in a bit of a unique car. It's a Toyota MRS, only mid-engine car on the grid. Here you see from the layout, shorter wheelbase, engine behind the driver, which definitely makes for some unique driving dynamics. But Elion is rocking the Lightning McQueen livery for the league, and he is about to cross the line. We'll see if he can improve, and he does. Elion crosses the line with a 109.16, which is just 200ths quicker than Brian's lap time of a 109.18. So that'll jump Elion ahead into 4th place and push Brian and Keith down into 5th and 6th. At the moment, Eric is sitting in 7th, although Eric has just crossed the line and improved on his lap time. Eric just put up a 109.36. That'll jump him ahead of Keith, move him up into 6th place. Keith is on the grid at the moment, although he is just starting his lap. So we'll see if Keith can improve. And we will go on board. Driver's view. This is Keith in the Lamborghini Murcielago, approaching sector 2 now, although he's going to have a big mistake and go off track, and that'll kill Keith's lap. He'll be looking to go to the pit stop soon and get back out on track, although only 6 minutes left in the session. The time is running out for all drivers. At the moment, though, David is in pole position with a 108.2. David, just like many of the other leagues, rocking the Porsche 911, but this time he's in the GT300 Porsche 911. This is the 996 version, as you see from the front headlights, which are different, as well as the rear wing. Big rear window makes for plenty of downforce. See, the back has a rear diffuser as well, but David has just crossed the line. He has not improved on his lap time, although at the moment he doesn't need to. He's currently sitting in pole position. Max is now on his out lap. Max is driving the Subaru BRZ for this league. Max has been one of the other dominant drivers so far, putting up fastest laps left and right in the last week at Zolder. But right now he would need to improve by half of a second in order to claim fastest lap of the session. At the moment, his current lap time is looking 2/10 slower than his previous fastest. Don't know if he'll be able to improve, although he's crossing the line right now. We'll see what he puts up. And it is a 109.2. So Max is not able to improve. 4 minutes left in the session, and he is still sitting in 2nd place with a 4/10 of a second gap between himself and Seamus, who's behind him in 3rd. And Keith has now jumped up ahead of many of the drivers, although there you see him slamming into the wall. Keith has put up a 108.97, which beats out Elion's lap time by just 2/10, and will just miss him out on 2nd place over Max by 2/10. Keith has just gotten off of his sim, so I think he's gonna call it quits for his qualifying session and hope that he could hang on to 3rd. But Elion has also moved ahead Elion has put up a 109.1, which has put him in 4th place, just 200ths of a second ahead of Brian. Still 200ths of a second ahead of Brian, but of course 2/10ths of a second behind Keith. Although Elion is currently out on his hot lap, and right now he is running 4/10ths quicker than his previous fastest lap. So if he's able to hold on to this would put him ahead of Keith and possibly ahead of Max, depending on if he could gain some time down the straight. Although he does lose some time down the last turn, and that is not going to be enough. Elion crosses the line with a 109.167, which is 5/1000ths of a second slower than his previous fastest lap, and not enough to jump ahead of Keith. But Seamus has just improved on his lap time and crossed the line with a 109.106, which is 600ths quicker than Elion's last time. And that'll put Seamus in 4th at the moment. 2 minutes left in the qualifying. Seamus, again in the Subaru Legacy, the 109.1. Max is still in 2nd in the BRZ. There we see Paul having a spin through the last turn. Paul is in 8th at the moment with a 111.5. He would need to improve by at least 2 seconds in order to overtake Eric for 7th. Eric is in 7th with a 193. And seeing some more movement up near the top of the grid, Brian has just beat out Elion and Seamus' lap time in the Legacy. He's just put up a 109.06. That beats Seamus' lap time by just 400ths of a second and puts him into 4th place. Still on a hot lap, although he would need to improve by a 1/10 of a second in order to move up into 3rd. Time is now running out though, less than a minute left plus overtime. All drivers are now out on the grid. Elion has just gotten back out on the grid. David is now crossing the line. He has just put up a 108.3, which is a 1/10 slower than his previous fastest lap. So that won't increase his gap in 1st place, although he's still sitting fairly comfortably in 1st with a half a second gap over Max. So we're going to go on board with Max and see if he's able to improve on his lap time. Although he just goes off into the grass, which will send him back into the pit lane, and I believe that'll be the end of Max's qualifying session. Brian is now back in the pits as well, so he'll be ending his qualifying session. Keith is still out on track. Eric has just crossed the line and ended his qualifying session in 7th place. Keith crosses the line with a 108.97, which is just 7/1000ths quicker than his previous fastest lap, but it's not going to be enough to beat out Max for 2nd place. Keith is still in 3rd, misses out on P2 by just 2/10ths of a second. The session is now over though. Top 3 will be David, followed by Max, and then Keith. Behind Keith is Brian, and then Seamus. And then we have Elion in 6th, Eric in 7th, and then Paul in 8th. That is now the end of the qualifying session. Drivers in about a minute or so are going to begin their 3 to 4 minute break to get their car setup dialed in and get prepared for race 1. But that is it for the qualifying. I will be right back in a few minutes to get you guys started for race 1 here at Autopolis. Again, this is week 3 out of 5 weeks in the Super GT League. At the moment, we have Brian leading the overall standings in the league. And 2nd place is Cole, although Cole is not racing, so he'll be taking a loss of points. And then we have Max currently in 3rd. But about 3 minutes left until the start of the race. I will be right back to take you guys off for the red lights. And it is now lights out and away we go for week 3 here at Autopolis. David has a solid gap ahead of him. Keith is in second at the moment. He makes the inside run over Seamus, and Seamus goes off into the dirt. That'll slow him down, allow Elion as well as Max to jump ahead. We see Brian making the inside move over Eric. That's P6 now, secured for Brian. Brian's gonna brake late and take a late apex into the last turn. Now has a better run going over Seamus. Brian is gonna take the outside line. The two drivers approaching the start-finish straight, going side by side. Seamus has the inside and he's gonna get just ahead of Brian, brake later, and maintain his position. Elion is in 4th, Max in 3rd, and then Seamus in 5th. Brian close behind though, flirting with the move on the inside for a second, but then tucks back behind Seamus. Continues to hold off on P6. 23 minutes left. Means there's plenty of time for all drivers to make overtakes, but Max has a spin, and Max has now dropped far behind. That allows Seamus and Brian to get ahead. Max is now in 8th place. Eric and Paul have also gone ahead from that spin, but Brian is still close to Seamus, still on the outside. He's gonna brake late, lock up the front right wheels. Now gonna look to get into the draft of Seamus, going down the straightaway. He's just about a half second behind. I don't know if that's enough to get any benefits from the draft. See if he can make up some time here through turn 1. David has now increased his gap between himself and Keith, who's in P2. The gap is now 2 seconds between those two drivers in the battle for first. Elion is about 1.5 seconds off of Keith, and then Seamus is about a half a second off of Elion in the battle for P3. There we see Paul and Max going side by side down the start-finish straightaway, but Max is going to have the better run. He's going to brake later, and that'll be the overtake complete for Max. P7 now secured for him, and he's going to have his eyes on Eric, who is 4 seconds ahead of him in P6. We're going to jump back ahead on board with Seamus. Seamus is attempting to get closer to Elion. Right now, Seamus sits 0.4 of a second behind Elion. But there we see Elion misses the apex through the last turn, and that's going to cost him a few tenths going down the straightaway, although Seamus has a bit of a mistake as well, and is not going to be able to capitalize on Elion's mistake. Seamus has just put up his fastest lap of his race with a 108.7. And at the moment, the fastest lap of the race is held by David, who has put up a 108.2. If he's able to hold on to the fastest lap, that would earn him a critical extra 2 points for the overall league standings. Regardless of where you finish, all drivers have something to race for throughout the whole race. Even if you're in last, getting that fastest lap of the race will earn you an extra 2 points, which is critical, and the difference between 8th and 7th and 7th and 6th place. So that alone will get you a huge boost in the overall league standings. So all drivers will most certainly be wanting to capitalize on that. But at the moment, David is the winner of that battle with his 108.2. In second place is Seamus with a 108.7. So he would need to improve by about half a second in order to claim those 2 extra points. But Seamus is now making the outside line over Elion. He goes a bit past him for a second, although Elion holds his position, and the battle between these 2 drivers is going to allow Brian to get closer, but Seamus makes the overtake and smashes into the side of Elion. Seamus is into the wall. Elion has been slowed down as well. Elion is now off into the grass. Big mistake from the 2 drivers. Is going to cost both of them all their positions. Seamus now in 7th. Elion is now in 8th. Looks like Elion might have some possible damage to his car as well. But that has allowed Brian to now move up into 3rd place. Brian has a 6-second gap between himself and Eric, who's behind him in P4. We're going to go on board with Max now because Max is looking to make another move down the straightaway, and he is going to complete the overtake over Eric. That is now P4 secured for Max, although he's going to brake late, lock up the front right and miss the apex, and Eric smashes into the back of Max. These 2 drivers now off track trying to recover, but that's going to cost them a ton of time and allow Paul, Seamus, and Elion to catch up. And Paul has now overtaken both drivers as well as Seamus. Paul now in 4th, Seamus now in 5th. Although Paul is slowed down, which has allowed Seamus to get through as well as Max. The battle in the middle of the pack has now heated up. Max is on the rear bumper of Seamus, and Elion is now right on the rear bumper of Paul, attempting to make a move. But Elion bashes into Paul. Paul goes off into the dirt, and Eric makes his way through for P6. Max has also now made the move down the inside over Seamus and secured P4. Ton of position changes here on lap 6 at Autopolis, with 16 minutes left to go, and we've already seen tons of chaos. But Seamus is still well in the battle with Max, looking to make the run down the outside, and he is able to do it for a moment, although Seamus is not able to stick the move, goes off into the dirt, and he's now back into P5. Max is now back into 4th. Elion is in 8th place at the moment, looking to catch up to Paul, hopefully make the overtake soon. Two drivers now going side by side. Elion gets a little loose in the back. That's going to cost him a few tenths. Just kisses the dirt a bit. That'll definitely put some grass in his tires, as well as slow him down going into this smaller straightaway. But it looks like Paul has slowed down a bit. Elion is now catching up and is going to look to make a move down the outside, but Paul has a mistake, locks up the front right tires, almost completely spins, but that'll now move Elion up into 7th place. Paul moves back down into 6th, and just as I say that, Seamus has made the overtake over Max. P4 now for Seamus in the Subaru Legacy, overtaking Max in the Subaru BRZ. It's a battle for the Subarus. 15 minutes left in the race. Max still within touching distance of Seamus, although about half a second behind. He's going to have some work to do. Two drivers now approaching the third sector. Seamus's last lap was a 1:10.1. Max's last lap was also a 1:10.1. So those two drivers are now mirroring each other's lap times. But David still holds the fastest lap of the session, and he actually improved on that fastest lap by a tenth of a second. So David holds the fastest lap with the 108.1, and in second is Max with the 108.3. And Max has another mistake. That'll put him into the wall. Common mistake from a few of the drivers now. But that's going to cost Max a ton of time. Still in sixth, although Elion is now getting closer. Elion now 2 seconds behind Max. And Max is 2 seconds behind Eric. David, though, still sitting comfortably in first. The gap between himself and Keith is now just under 6 seconds. But there we see another mistake from one of the drivers. This time it's Elion getting loose going through the last turn, goes off into the dirt, and that'll cost Elion a few seconds, put him further behind Max, possibly end his hopes at gaining any other positions throughout the race. We're now halfway through the race, 12 and a half minutes down. 12 and a half minutes to go. But we're now on board with Max, who is in the hunt, chasing down Eric for P5, although Max still 2 seconds behind, so plenty of work for him to do. His last lap was 5 seconds slower than Eric's, although that was the lap when he had the big mistake, so we'll see if he's able to improve in this lap. Lap 10 now of about a 21 to 22 lap race. But these two drivers are now approaching the last turn, going to make their way down the start-finish straight. It looks like the two are mirroring each other's lap times, although they're going to cross the line now, so we'll see what times they put up. And they almost are mirroring each other's lap times, although Max was 0.2 quicker in his last lap, a 109.7 in comparison to Eric's 109.9. leader of the race at the moment is David. David ahead by 8 seconds. The gap between himself and Keith is only increasing as the race progresses. But there we see the two Porsche drivers for the Super GT League. This is David in the white and blue Porsche 911 996, and then in front of him is Paul in that tannish brown 911. Although Paul is a lap down, so Paul is the first blue flag driver of the race. We'll see if David is able to get by without having his time compromised too much, and he is able to do so. Great driving there from Paul and David. Paul slowing down just enough and getting out of the way on the outside line to allow David to get through, and David completing a clean overtake over the first blue flag driver of the race. But Eric and Max are the two closest drivers on the grid, although the two of them are separated by 1.5 seconds. The gap in the last lap was about half a second, so this gap is only increasing between the two. Max getting further ahead. He's going to have his eyes on Seamus next. Seamus is 6 seconds ahead of him, although there's only 8 minutes left in the race, so that'll get these drivers about 8 more laps, so I don't know if that'll be enough time for Max to catch up. Elion has had a rough race so far, having two collisions early on, which has put him into 7th place. Has not been able to do much since then, but he is facing an uphill battle and will need to decrease his gap by 9 seconds in order to overtake P6, which is Eric. Eric driving the black and white Nissan 350Z, the sole Nissan driver on the grid for the Super GT League. There we see the high downforce, very aggressive setup from this car, complemented with the big rear wing, front diffuser, as well as the front splitter, as well as those aero pieces on the bumper. But Eric has just put up a 110, which is about 7/10 slower than Elion. So if Eric continues at this pace and Elion continues to cut his lap times down, we could possibly be looking at a battle in the last lap for P6 between Elion and Eric. It's still a pretty sizable gap between the two drivers. But other than that, the gaps looks to have increased between most here on the grid. Eric and Max are the two closest drivers, separated by 4 seconds in the battle for P5 and 6. Although Seamus has just had a spin, Seamus is upside down and he has to teleport to the pits, which is going to cost him a ton of time. That puts him an entire lap down. I didn't catch it on the broadcast, but as soon as I cut to him after seeing the red flag indicator, his car was completely upside down. He's now in the pits once again. Although he's met in the pit lane by Eric, I don't know why Eric is in the pits, but he has not stopped in his pit box, so I think Eric might be out of the race as well. reason for Seamus's upside down crash. He was going through the last turn of the track and ended up smashing into the wall for the entrance of pit lane, which immediately blew up his engine and then flipped him upside down. So race over for Seamus. 8th place for him. I don't know what happened with Eric when Eric went in the pits at the same time, but that ended up moving Eric down into 6th place and putting Elion ahead into 5th. There we see Eric locking his front rights going through the last turn of the track. But a very dominant race from David. David is leading by 11 seconds. His gap only continues to increase. He also continues to hold the fastest lap of the race with that 108.1, which is 2/10 quicker than Max's fastest lap of the race. So if David is able to hold on to his position and his lap time, he would be looking at 27 points for the race. So a very big result from him if he can hold on to it. I would also see him starting race 2 in 8th place due to the reverse grid. But other than that, it looks like all the gaps are 5+ seconds. So I don't think we'll be seeing any other overtakes throughout the remainder of the race, unless there's any major spins from these drivers. But no drivers have made pit stops besides Seamus and Eric. Pit stops are not mandatory, so hopefully all these drivers filled up on enough fuel to last them the whole race. We've already seen from some of our previous weeks, some of the drivers, I know David being one of them, and I believe possibly Elion did it, although I know he definitely did it in one of the last leagues. Those drivers have definitely seen their car run out of fuel with a minute or two left in the league races here at Apex before, so hopefully those drivers got enough fuel for the whole race. But all of them are still out on track. Just over a minute to go. They see Elion crossing the line, still in 5th, and he is in the 109s, so about a second off from David's place. Looks like Paul just had a mistake though, and he got slowed down. Now Max behind Paul, although Paul is the lap down, so this is not a battle for position. Paul is the blue flag driver, and he's going to get out of the way and allow Max to make the move up on the inside. We are now in the last lap of the race. This is lap 21. David, the leader for the entire race, with a very dominant race, as well as a very dominant qualifying session. He is about to cross the line in the Porsche 911, and that is first place secured. Race 1, victory for David. Also holds the fastest lap, so that'll be 27 points in total, as long as no other drivers beat out his fastest lap in the last lap of the race. But Keith crosses the line as well. That'll be a podium finish for Keith. And then finally, we're going to see Brian crossing the line for P3. So 3 different cars on the podium. We have a Porsche, a Lamborghini, and then a Subaru. Max is about to cross the line for P4. Looks like Eric has already crossed the line in the Nissan 350Z for P6. But that is now P4 secured for Max. Paul has also crossed the line for P7, and now Elion is going to be the last driver to cross the line. P5 secured for him. That is the end of race 1. plenty of chaos throughout the race. But the ultimate winners are David, Keith, and Brian. But that is the end of the first race. Stay tuned because we will be back in about 3 to 4 minutes for the start of race 2. Another 25-minute race here at Autopolis. But thank you guys for watching the stream and supporting the broadcast. Continue to stay tuned because we'll be back very shortly for the start of the next race. It is a reverse grid, which means Seamus will start in first, Paul starting next to him in second, and then David and Keith will be taking up the back row. But we will be right back. Very exciting first race, and I'm expecting nothing less for race 2. Ten seconds to go until the start of the race. But Paul will be starting at the front of the grid, followed by Eric and then Elion. but the lights are now out. David has gone into the grass, getting his start. Eric has now jumped into first. Elion sitting behind him in second. Max has made up the move down the inside over Brian. P5 now secured for Max. There we see Eric locking up through turn 1, which is going to allow Elion to have a run going down the straightaway. Keith also has a run over Seamus going down the start-finish straight. Those two drivers going side by side. Keith has the outside line, but slightly ahead of Seamus. Seamus bumps into Keith though. Those two drivers are going to fall back. With that incident, Keith now falls into 6th, Seamus falling into 7th. Big mistake there from those two, costing them a ton of time. Max has made another overtake though. Max now jumps ahead into P2. Eric has gone down into P3. Elion leading the race at the moment, although Eric makes a mistake. And that's going to allow Brian to get through as well as David. Eric has now moved down into 5th, losing 3 positions on this lap alone. Elion leading the race with a 1-second lead. David is looking to make an inside move over Brian, although he's not able to make the better run. Brian locks up his front rights. That'll put Brian into the grass and allow David to get closer. And David is now going to look to make a move down the inside of Brian. He does make the move, although Brian looked to have a better exit. He's not going to though. And that is now going to be P3 secured for David. Great move capitalizing on the mistake of Brian. Keith is now also making the overtake over Eric, and he is able to complete the move through the last turn of the track. P5 now secured for Keith. But Brian and David continue to battle out, going side by side through turn 1. Brian has the outside line, but David's going to brake later. Brian, though, has a great exit and is going to have a bit of a run going through this first sector. We'll see if it's enough. I don't think it is. David continues to hold on to the position, defending very well. Two drivers battling it out, though, on lap 3. Elion continues to lead the race by a second. Max is behind him in the BRZ, and then a second behind Max is David and Brian. So these 4 drivers are getting a bit of a gap between 5th, 6th, and 7th is falling a bit further back behind. That car is driven by Paul, and then Seamus is the furthest back. He is now sitting 8 seconds behind Paul in the battle for P7. Once again, though, Brian is going to take a very wide entrance to set himself up for the better exit through turn 1. David continues to defend the inside line, while Brian starts to turn very wide, hoping to get a better exit over David, although he hasn't been successful so far. But still just under 20 minutes left to go. Plenty of time for him to make that overtake. Now looking on board with the leader, this is Elion in the Toyota MRS, with Max close behind, followed by David and then Brian. David is now getting closer and closer to Max as the race progresses. David has once again put up the fastest lap of the session with the 108.1, and he's now going to look to make the move on the inside over Max, going through the last turn, and he is able to complete the move. A very good overtake there from David, keeping it clean and keeping it quick and easy as he completes the move for P2. Max now falls back into third. David is now going to have his eyes on Elion. David's last lap was a 108.5. Elion's last lap was a 108.9, which means David is projected to catch up to Elion within the next 1 to 2 laps. Although he's still going to be facing some pressure from Max, who remains close behind David, very much still within touching distance. But Brian also not too far off, about a half second behind Max in the battle for P3. But David brakes slightly later and is going to get on the outside of Elion. The two drivers are now very much side by side, almost completely even, going down the start-finish straight. Although David has a slightly better run, he's going to continue to gain some time, brake later than Elion. Max is also going to brake later than Elion, and a very brave move from Max down the outside of Elion. David completes the overtake as well as Max, so Elion now moves down into P3 and is now facing pressure from Brian. Brian has also completed the overtake though, and that is now P3 for Brian. And there you see how quick the race can turn around for any of the drivers here in this Super GT League. Elion was just leading the race, and in the span of just 2 turns, he went from first all the way down into 4th place, and now has plenty of work left to do with 15 minutes to go in the race. But Brian is going to lock up the front rights going through the last turn. That's not going to be a big enough mistake for Elion to get through. We're now on board with Brian as he gets closer and closer to Max. Brian gets on the outside of Max for about a second, but is not able to complete the move. Although Brian has the better run going through sector 1 and 2. Max, though, defending his line, braking late. Brian now holds the inside. Max continues to hold off Brian. Two drivers battling it out now on lap 13. 9 minutes left to go in the race, but Brian is right on the rear bumper of Max. Keith also putting some pressure on Elion in the battle for P4. But I think Eric has just made a mistake, because we just saw in the top left in the timing board, Seamus has jumped ahead of Eric. Seamus now moving ahead into P6. Eric falling back into P7. Brian is now well within the draft of Max though, and he gets out of it to see if he can have the faster run going down the outside. It looks like he does have a slightly faster run than Max, although Max brakes a little bit later. Brian locks up the front right, and Max once again holds his position going through turn 1. The battle between Max and Brian has only allowed Keith and Elion to get closer. This is now a four-way battle. These drivers all battling it out. Max is currently leading the battle in second. Behind him is Brian in third. And then we have Keith in fourth in that black and white Murcielago, followed by Elion in fifth in that Toyota MRS. But Keith is now catching up to Brian, and Keith seems to have the better run, although he brakes way too late, goes off into the gravel, and Keith is going to lose his fourth place position to Elion, now dropping back into fifth, losing a ton of time in the process. But Brian brakes late, goes off into the dirt as well, and Elion has now made the overtake, jumped up into P3. Elion is now going to have his eyes set on Max in the battle for second, although the mistakes from Keith followed by the mistake from Brian has allowed Elion to move right up into the podium position. Elion is now hunting down Max. Elion's last lap was a 109.8. Max's last lap was a 109.4. 6.5 minutes left to go, so still plenty of work for Elion to do if he's going to have any sort of hopes of overtaking Max for P2. Paul has a big mistake though, going off into the grass through sector 2. Paul in 8th at the moment. That's only going to put him further off from Eric and possibly end any of Paul's hopes at overtaking Eric for P7. The battle for second continues to heat up, as Elion is only a half second behind Max, and then Brian is only a half a second behind Elion, at the moment sitting in P4. Max getting the better of these two drivers though in the BRZ for now. David still holds the fastest lap of the session with a 107.9. It's also the fastest lap of the night. He's the first driver to break into the 107s. Brian has the second fastest lap of the session with the 108.1. He would need to improve by 2/10 in order to claim those 2 extra points. But as of right now, it's looking like David is going to complete the full sweep on week 3 here at Autopolis, possibly getting first in both races, as well as the extra 2 points for fastest lap in both races. Would be a huge result for David, possibly jumping him up into first in the overall standing. But the focus right now is on Elion in the battle between himself and Max. Elion's last lap was a 108.8. Max's last lap was a 109.1. 3 minutes left to go, meaning there's about 3 to 4 laps left in the race. But Elion misses the apex, brakes late, and that's going to allow Brian to get closer for a second, although not enough for Brian to get within overtaking distance, although he is well within the draft, and is going to have a very big run going down the straightaway. Brian is now on the outside of Elion, and Brian has now completed the move down the outside. That is P3 now secured for Brian. Elion has now moved back into 4th. 2.5 minutes left to go though, and Brian is now going to have his eyes on Max. Brian's last lap was a 108.5, while Max's last lap was a 108.8. Brian running 0.3 quicker, and at the moment, he's about half a second behind Max. So of course, it's the battle for P2. Brian is the leader of the overall standings at the moment, so he's going to be looking to defend his place and get as many points as possible in the second race, but only 2 minutes left to go. David is 9 seconds ahead, so as long as he doesn't make any big mistakes, David is going to be able to get another win, dominating the grid here at Autopolis. But Elion brakes late and puts some pressure on Brian. Brian goes off into the dirt, which allows Elion to go right by for P3. Eric has also spun through the second sector. Eric in 7th at the moment. But Elion continues to hold off Brian, while Max remains out in 2nd. A minute left to go in the race. David is about to cross the line, and as he crosses the line, he is going to be getting the white flag. This is now the last lap of the race for all drivers. Elion, of course, right behind Max. This is now the last lap. Brian has fallen further back behind Elion, so I don't think Brian is going to be able to complete any more moves. It's looking to be P4 secured for Brian, but Elion on Max are now battling it out in the last lap. This is the battle for 2nd. Elion has the inside, although he brakes late and allows Brian to catch up for a brief moment. Elion continues to hold on to his position though, although Max misses the apex, and Elion now has the outside line, getting slightly ahead for about 1/10 of a second, although Max continues to hold his position. The two drivers now approaching the last sector in the last lap here in race 2. This is it. This is crunch time. All drivers now making their way down the last turn. Brian though slightly bumps into Elion, and Brian is going to have the better run, and Brian is going to make the overtake over Elion. A last minute overtake from Brian. P3 secured for him. Elion gets pushed off of the podium position at the very last minute and moves into P4. Keith crosses the line for P5. Seamus is now going to cross the line for P6. Paul has already crossed the line for P8. And then we're going to see Eric. Eric has now crossed the line for P7. But that is now the end of the race. There you have it. Some last lap, last turn fireworks as Brian makes the overtake over Elion. David completes his dominant run here at Autopolis and gets another victory, as well as another extra 2 points for fastest lap. Max is the other podium sitter, finishing in 2nd. Great racing here at Autopolis for week 3 of our Super GT League. That is going to be all though. very exciting racing. Thank you guys all for tuning in. We will be taking a break on next Wednesday, a bye week for all the drivers, and then we'll be returning on the 9th for week 4 of the Super GT League. But thank you guys all for tuning in. Great stream, great racing, and I will see you guys all not next week, but the week after for week 4 of the Super GT League. And thank you guys all again for tuning in. If you don't already, please hit that subscribe button as well as the notification button. That way you guys get notified anytime we go live. But that is all for the broadcast, and I will see you